The crack of the auctioneer's gavel echoed through the dusty square of Willow Creek, Montana Territory. 1873. As Madeline Jennings flinched, her thin cotton dress providing little protection against the autumn chill or the prying eyes of the crowd. Sold for 38 cents to the gentleman in the back. The auctioneer's voice boomed across the makeshift platform where Madeline stood, tears silently streaming down her dirt-streaked face. 38 cents. That was her worth after the bank seized her father's property following his death, leaving her with nothing but debts and a town eager to see the last of the Jennings family. At 22, she'd never imagined she'd be sold into indentured servitude to pay off her father's gambling debts. From the back of the crowd, Benjamin Sinclair watched with a tightness in his chest. The tall, broad-shouldered cattle rancher had only come to town for supplies, not to witness a human being sold like livestock. His hand moved unconsciously to the leather pouch at his hip, heavy with gold from his recent cattle sale. The fortune he'd spent 10 years building felt suddenly insignificant compared to the dignity of the woman with fiery auburn hair standing before him. The buyer, a greasy-haired saloon owner named Thaddeus Quinn, was already approaching the platform, his yellow-toothed grin making his intentions for the young woman all too clear. Ben had heard stories about Quinn's servants, how they rarely lasted more than a few months before disappearing or worse. "Wait," Ben's voice cut through the dispersing crowd. "I'll pay more." The auctioneer raised an eyebrow. "Sale's done, Mr. Sinclair. Mr. Quinn here paid fair and square." $100, Ben stated firmly, stepping forward. The crowd gasped. For a servant girl, unheard of. Quinn turned, his small eyes narrowing. "She ain't for resale, Cowboy." 200, Ben countered, meeting Quinn's gaze steadily. The auctioneer cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Sinclair, this ain't how we conduct." $500, Ben interrupted, his voice unwavering. "Cash, right now." The crowd fell silent. $500 was enough to buy prime grazing land or a small herd of cattle. For a debt servant girl, it was outrageous. Quinn sputtered, his face turning an ugly shade of red. "You're a fool, Sinclair." Perhaps he was. Ben had never spent money so recklessly, but something about the quiet dignity in the woman's posture, despite her circumstances, moved him in ways he couldn't explain. The sheriff, who had been overseeing the auction, stepped forward. "Thaddeus, the town's debt collection laws do allow for competitive bidding. Mr. Sinclair's offer would clear the Jennings debts 3 times over." After a tense silence, the auctioneer cleared his throat. $500, going once, going twice. Sold to Benjamin Sinclair. As Ben approached the platform, Madeline looked up, her green eyes meeting his for the first time, not with gratitude but with suspicion and a flicker of defiance that surprised him. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly as he helped her down from the platform, her voice barely audible over the murmuring crowd. "Nothing, Miss Jennings," Ben replied, keeping his voice low. "No person should be sold like cattle. You're free to go wherever you please." Madeline stared at him in disbelief. Freedom hadn't been an option moments ago. "I have nowhere to go," she admitted, hating the vulnerability in her voice. "They took everything." Ben nodded thoughtfully, keeping a respectful distance between them as they walked away from the prying eyes of the townsfolk. "I have a proposition, then. I need help at my ranch, cooking, cleaning, basic work. Fair wages, your own cabin, and my word that you'll be treated with respect." Madeline studied his face, searching for deception but finding only earnestness in his blue eyes. "Why would you help a stranger?" Ben looked away, suddenly uncomfortable. "Let's just say I know what it's like to be at the mercy of others." He extended his hand. "Do we have an agreement, Miss Jennings?" After a moment's hesitation, Madeline took his hand. "Yes, Mr. Sinclair, we do." The Sinclair Ranch sprawled across the rolling foothills of the Montana Territory, a testament to Benjamin's decade of hard work. The main house stood solid and welcoming, with smoke curling from the chimney against the backdrop of snow-capped mountains. As they approached on horseback, Madeline taking in the vastness of the property, Ben pointed to a small cabin about 50 yards from the main house. "That will be yours. It's not much, but it's clean and warm." "It's more than I expected," Madeline replied honestly. After losing everything, even this modest offering seemed generous. Ben helped her down from his horse, noticing how she winced slightly. "Are you hurt?" "Just tired," she lied, not wanting to mention the bruises left by the debt collectors who dragged her from her father's house 3 days ago. Ben nodded, though his eyes reflected doubt. "Mrs. Chambers, my housekeeper, left some food warming on the stove. I'll have her bring it to your cabin so you can rest." True to his word, an hour later, a stout, gray-haired woman appeared at Madeline's door with a tray of stew, fresh bread, and a pot of tea. "Mr. Sinclair said you might need these too," she added, placing a bundle of clothing on the bed, simple, sturdy dresses and undergarments that would fit Madeline's slender frame. "He bought these for me?" Madeline asked, surprised. Mrs. Chambers nodded. "Had them ordered months ago for his sister who was supposed to visit from back east, but she never came. Said they might as well go to good use." She paused, studying Madeline with kind eyes. "He's a good man, Mr. Sinclair, better than most in these parts." Madeline wasn't ready to accept such assessments at face value. Her father had seemed a good man too until his gambling debts mounted and the drinking began. "We'll see," was all she said. The following days established a rhythm. Madeline helped Mrs. Chambers with household duties, learning the workings of the ranch. Benjamin was often gone from dawn until dusk, managing his cattle operation with his 5 ranch hands. When their paths crossed, he was unfailingly polite but maintained a careful distance. A week after her arrival, Madeline was hanging laundry when she noticed a commotion by the corral. Ben was attempting to break a spirited black stallion, but the horse was having none of it, bucking wildly until Ben was thrown hard against the fence. Without thinking, Madeline dropped her basket and ran to the corral. The ranch hands were helping Ben to his feet, but blood was streaming from a gash on his forehead. "Bring him to the house," she ordered, surprising herself with her authority. The men complied without question, half carrying their boss to the porch. In the kitchen, Madeline cleaned the wound with steady hands. "You'll need stitches," she said matter-of-factly. Ben winced as she dabbed at the cut with whiskey-soaked cloth. "You know how to stitch a wound." "My father cut himself badly on farm equipment once. The doctor showed me how." She didn't add that her father had been too drunk to seek proper medical attention, leaving her to care for him. Ben studied her face as she worked, noticing for the first time the light dusting of freckles across her nose and the determined set of her jaw. "You're full of surprises, Miss Jennings." "As are you, Mr. Sinclair," she replied, threading a needle. "Hold still. This will hurt." Ben gritted his teeth but didn't flinch as she made 5 neat stitches across his brow. When she finished, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a moment of connection neither had expected. That evening, Ben insisted Madeline join him for dinner in the main house rather than eating alone in her cabin, as she usually did. "I wanted to thank you properly for your medical assistance today," he explained as Mrs. Chambers served a roast with vegetables from the kitchen garden. "It was nothing," Madeline said, uncomfortable with his gratitude. "Anyone would have done the same." "Not with such skill," Ben argued. He hesitated, then added, "I've been meaning to ask, what will you do when your contract is complete?" "You're welcome to stay on, of course, but I imagine you might have other plans." Madeline set down her fork, surprised by the question. "I haven't thought that far ahead. There's nothing left for me in Willow Creek." Ben nodded thoughtfully. "You could homestead. The government's offering land to single women now, not just men." "With what money?" Madeline asked, more sharply than she intended. "I may not be indentured anymore, but I'm still penniless." "You're earning wages now," Ben reminded her gently, "and I pay fairly." Madeline felt a flush of shame at her outburst. "I'm sorry, you've been more than generous. It's just difficult to imagine a future when everything I knew is gone." Ben's expression softened. "I understand that feeling better than you might think." He seemed about to say more, then changed course. How about I teach you to ride tomorrow? Might help to get a broader view of the territory. The offer surprised her. You'd take time away from your work to teach me. Consider it repayment for the medical attention, he said with a small smile that transformed his usually serious face. The next day, Ben selected a gentle mare named Daisy for Madeline's first lesson. With patient instruction, he showed her how to mount, how to hold the reins, and how to communicate with the horse through subtle shifts in her weight. You're a natural, he observed as she guided Daisy in a circle around the corral. Must be those steady hands of yours. Madeline felt a strange lightness in her chest at his praise. It had been so long since anyone had acknowledged her abilities rather than her shortcomings. Over the following weeks, their riding lessons became a regular occurrence. Ben showed her the boundaries of his property, the best fishing spots along the creek, and the meadow where wildflowers bloomed in vibrant patches of color. During these rides, he gradually shared pieces of his past, how he'd come west as a penniless 16-year-old, worked as a ranch hand for years saving every penny, finally buying his first small parcel of land and a few head of cattle. How he'd built everything through sheer determination and a refusal to fail. In turn, Madeline revealed bits of her own story: her mother's death from fever when she was 12, the gradual decline of their farm as her father turned to gambling and drink, her efforts to keep them afloat by taking in mending and laundry from town. You deserved better, Ben said one evening as they watched the sunset from a hilltop overlooking the ranch. So did you, Madeline replied. Having to grow up so young. Something was changing between them, a slow building trust neither had expected to find. As autumn deepened into winter, the first heavy snowfall transformed the landscape. Ranch work slowed, and evenings lengthened. Ben began inviting Madeline to join him in the main house after dinner, where he'd teach her to play chess by the fire, or they'd simply read in companionable silence. One such evening, as Mrs. Chambers was bidding them good night, she commented, "You two remind me of my Henry and me way back when, before all the children came along." After she left, an awkward silence fell between them. Ben cleared his throat. Mrs. Chambers sometimes speaks without thinking. "It's fine," Madeline said, though her cheeks were warm. "She means well." Ben stood abruptly, moving to stoke the fire. "I want you to know that I don't. That is, when I brought you here, I had no expectations beyond offering employment." "I wouldn't want you to think I don't," Madeline interrupted, saving him from his uncomfortable explanation. "I know you're an honorable man, Benjamin." It was the first time she'd used his given name, and the sound of it in her voice made him turn to look at her. The firelight cast a golden glow on her face, and something tightened in his chest. "Madeline," he said softly, as if testing her name on his tongue. A loud pounding on the front door interrupted whatever he'd been about to say. Ben frowned, grabbing his pistol from the desk drawer before approaching the entrance. On the porch stood one of his ranch hands, covered in snow and breathing hard. "Boss, rustlers hit the north pasture. They got at least 20 head. Ben's expression hardened. "Gather the men. We ride in 10 minutes. He turned to Madeline. "I'm sorry, I have to go." "Of course," she nodded, concern evident in her eyes. "Please be careful." He paused, seeming to want to say more, then simply nodded before hurrying to prepare. The men were gone for 2 days. Madeline barely slept, constantly checking the horizon for any sign of their return. When they finally appeared, riding slowly through the falling snow, she rushed to the porch, counting anxiously to ensure all had returned. Ben was last in line, his face grim beneath his snow-covered hat. As he dismounted, Madeline could see he was favoring his left side. "You're hurt," she said, hurrying to help him. "It's nothing. Just a graze," he insisted, but allowed her to support him as they entered the house. In the warm kitchen, she helped him remove his coat, gasping when she saw the blood-stained shirt beneath. "A graze, Benjamin Sinclair, you've been shot. We recovered the cattle," he said, as if that were the only thing that mattered. "Caught 2 of the rustlers. Sheriff's got them now." Sit down before you fall down, Madeline ordered, already gathering medical supplies. The bullet had indeed only grazed his side, but the wound was deep enough to require cleaning and bandaging. As she worked, her hands steady despite her concern, Ben watched her face. "I was worried you might not be here when I got back," he admitted quietly, Madeline's hands stilled. "Why would you think that? People leave," he said simply. "That's been my experience." The vulnerability in his voice made her heart ache. "I'm not going anywhere, Benjamin." "Not unless you want me to." Their eyes met, and this time neither looked away. Slowly, cautiously, Ben reached up to touch her cheek, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "I don't want you to go, ever." The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither was quite ready to fully express. Madeline covered his hand with hers. "Then I'll stay." The winter deepened, and with it, the connection between them. They never spoke directly of what had passed between them that night, but something had shifted. Their conversations became more personal, their glances held longer, and occasionally, when handing her into the sleigh for Sunday services or helping her across an icy patch, Ben's hand would linger on hers. Christmas approached, bringing with it preparations that kept everyone busy. Madeline helped Mrs. Chambers bake cookies and pies, while secretly working on a gift for Ben, a hand-knitted scarf in deep blue wool that she'd purchased with her wages. 3 days before Christmas, Ben announced he needed to make a trip to town for supplies. "I might be gone overnight if the weather turns," he told Madeline over breakfast. "Will you be all right here?" "Of course," she assured him. "Mrs. Chambers and I have plenty to keep us occupied." Ben nodded, seeming unusually distracted. "Good, that's good." He hesitated, then added, "I might have a surprise when I return." Madeline raised an eyebrow. "A surprise? What kind?" "It wouldn't be a surprise if I told you," he replied with a rare grin that made him look younger, almost boyish. The next day brought a fresh snowfall, blanketing the ranch in pristine white. Madeline was hanging pine boughs along the porch railing when she heard the jingle of sleigh bells approaching. Expecting Ben, she turned with a smile that quickly faded when she recognized the man driving the sleigh. Thaddeus Quinn, fear and anger warred within her as he pulled up to the house. How had he found her? What did he want? "Well, if it isn't the Jennings girl," Quinn called, his voice as oily as she remembered, looking mighty fine for a servant. Madeline stood her ground. "Mr. Quinn." "This is private property. State your business or leave," Quinn chuckled, climbing down from the sleigh. "That's no way to greet an old friend, especially one who's come with interesting news." He moved closer, his breath visible in the cold air. "See, I've been looking into your father's debts. Turns out the bank might have made some miscalculations. The amount you were sold for might not have been legal." "What are you talking about?" Madeline demanded, though dread was building in her stomach. "I'm talking about you still being legally bound to your father's debts," Quinn said, his smile predatory. "And as the primary creditor, I have the right to collect, unless, of course, your cowboy benefactor wants to negotiate." "Get off this property," Madeline said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Now," Quinn's smile vanished. "I don't think you understand your position, girl. You're coming with me one way or another. Sinclair paid too much for you once. Let's see if he'll do it again." As he reached for her arm, the sound of a rifle being cocked cut through the winter air. "Touch her, and it'll be the last thing you do." Mrs. Chambers stood in the doorway, Ben's hunting rifle steady in her hands. Quinn froze, then slowly raised his hands. "Now, let's not be hasty. This is a legal matter." "The only matter here is you trespassing," Mrs. Chambers replied calmly. "Now get back in that sleigh before I decide these steps need washing with your blood." With a final venomous glare at Madeline, Quinn retreated. "This isn't over," he called as he climbed into his sleigh. "Not by a long shot." After he disappeared down the lane, Madeline's legs finally gave out and she sank onto the porch steps, shaking. Mrs. Chambers lowered the rifle, coming to sit beside her. "You all right, child?" "He'll be back," Madeline whispered. "What if he's telling the truth? What if I'm still legally bound to those debts?" "Mr. Sinclair won't let anything happen to you," Mrs. Chambers said firmly. That man cares for you more than I've seen him care for anything or anyone in all the years I've known him." Madeline looked up, surprised by the certainty in the older woman's voice. "How can you be so sure?" Mrs. Chambers smiled gently. "Because I have eyes, child. And because I know what a man looks like when he's found the woman he wants to spend his life with." That evening, Ben returned, his sleigh laden with supplies and packages. His smile of greeting faded instantly when he saw Madeline's troubled expression. "What happened?" he demanded, quickly crossing to her side. After hearing about Quinn's visit, Ben's face darkened with anger. "I'll ride to town first thing tomorrow. If there's any legal issue, we'll sort it out." "And if there isn't," Madeline asked quietly, "if he's just making threats?" "Then he'll answer to me," Ben replied, his voice hard. "No one is taking you anywhere, Madeline. I promise you that." Something in his tone made her look up sharply. There was a fierce protectiveness there, but something else too, something that made her heart beat faster. "Benjamin," she began hesitantly, "if Quinn is right, if there's still a legal claim." "Then I'll pay it," he interrupted firmly. "Whatever it takes." "You can't keep spending your fortune on me," Madeline protested. "You've already done too much." Ben took her hands in his gaze intense. "Nothing I've ever spent money on has been as worthwhile as bringing you here. Nothing." The conviction in his voice silenced her objections. They stood there, connected by their joined hands and something much deeper, until Mrs. Chambers discreetly cleared her throat from the doorway. "Supper's ready when you two are," she announced, failing to hide her knowing smile. The next morning, Ben prepared to ride to town despite the threatening snow clouds. "I should be back by nightfall," he told Madeline as he saddled his horse. "Don't worry, we'll get this sorted out." "Be careful," she said, handing him a package of food for the journey. Their fingers brushed, and on impulse, Madeline rose on tiptoe to kiss his cheek. "Come back to me." Ben looked momentarily stunned, then a slow smile spread across his face. "Always," he promised. As predicted, the snow began falling heavily by midday. Madeline tried to distract herself with Christmas preparations, but her eyes constantly strayed to the window, watching for Ben's return. When darkness fell with no sign of him, her anxiety grew. "He should have been back by now," she fretted to Mrs. Chambers. "The weather's slowed him down, that's all," the housekeeper reassured her, though concern lined her face as well. "Mr. Sinclair knows these trails better than anyone." Another hour passed, then two. Madeline was about to suggest sending the ranch hands out to search when she finally heard hoofbeats approaching. She rushed to the door, flinging it open to see Ben dismounting, covered in snow but gloriously, wonderfully safe. Without thinking, she ran to him, throwing her arms around his cold form. "I was so worried." Ben's arms came around her, holding her tight against him. "I'm sorry. The trail was nearly impassable in places." They stood embraced in the falling snow until Mrs. Chambers called from the porch, "Bring him inside before you both catch your death, girl." By the fire, warming with hot coffee laced with whiskey, Ben recounted his meeting with the sheriff and the town lawyer. "Quinn was bluffing. Your father's debts were legally settled by the auction. He has no claim on you whatsoever." Relief washed over Madeline. "So it's truly over?" "Not quite," Ben said, reaching into his coat pocket. "There's something else we need to discuss." He withdrew a small velvet box, and Madeline's breath caught. With deliberate movements, Ben moved from his chair to kneel before her, taking her hand in his. "Madeline Jennings, from the moment I saw you standing on that auction block, something in me knew I couldn't let you go. These past months, getting to know you, your strength, your kindness, your spirit have been the happiest of my life." He opened the box, revealing a delicate gold ring set with a small, perfect diamond. "I don't want you to stay as my employee. I want you to stay as my wife, if you'll have me." Tears filled Madeline's eyes as she looked at this man who had quite literally purchased her freedom only to offer her his heart. "Benjamin Sinclair, are you sure you want to spend the last of your fortune on me?" he smiled, understanding her attempt at humor through her emotion. "You are worth every penny I have and more. I love you, Madeline, more than I ever thought possible." "I love you too," she whispered, the words she'd been holding back for weeks finally breaking free. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." As Ben slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to take her in his arms, Madeline marveled at the journey that had brought her here from being sold for pennies to being valued beyond price by the man she loved. They were married on Christmas Eve in the ranch house parlor with Mrs. Chambers weeping happily and the ranch hands standing awkwardly in their Sunday best. The local minister pronounced them husband and wife as snow fell gently outside, transforming the world into a glittering wonderland. That night, as they lay entwined in what was now their shared bedroom, Ben traced gentle fingers along Madeline's cheek. "Are you happy, Mrs. Sinclair?" Her new name sent a thrill through her. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible," she assured him, nestling closer into his embrace. "Though I'm still not sure how I got so lucky." "I'm the lucky one," Ben insisted, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Finding you was worth every hardship I've ever faced." Spring came to the Montana Territory in a riot of wildflowers and new beginnings. The ranch thrived under their joint care, with Madeline proving herself not just a capable partner in the household but in the business as well, her quick mind for figures helping Ben negotiate better prices for their cattle. On a warm May afternoon, exactly 1 year after Madeline had been standing on that auction block, Ben surprised her with a picnic in the meadow where they'd often ridden during her lessons. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a folded document. Madeline opened it curiously, her eyes widening as she read. "This is a deed. In my name." Ben nodded, watching her reaction carefully. "For 40 acres adjoining our property to the east, the best land for growing wheat in the territory, according to the agricultural agent." "But why in my name?" she asked, confused. "Because I want you to know that you're not just my wife, you're my equal partner in everything." He took her hand, his expression serious. "What was done to you being sold, having your dignity stripped away, that should never have happened. I want you to have something that's completely yours, that no one can ever take from you." Tears welled in Madeline's eyes at his understanding. The wound of that public humiliation had healed over time, but the scar remained. This gesture, this tangible recognition of her worth and independence, meant more than he could know. "I have something for you too," she said softly, placing his hand on her still flat stomach. "Something that's completely ours." Ben's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "A baby." "We're having a baby," Madeline nodded, laughing as he whooped with joy and lifted her in a gentle spin. "Dr. Pearson confirmed it yesterday. By Christmas, we'll be 3. As Ben kissed her beneath the vast Montana sky, Madeline reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them together. From the darkest moment of her life had come this boundless joy, this love that had transformed them both. She had been sold for pennies, but Benjamin Sinclair had spent his fortune to make her his wife. And in doing so, they had both found something far more valuable than gold. They had found home in each other's hearts.